I'm with Brian Jones from B3 Archery today at the ATA show. I want to talk about some of the stuff that you guys are manufacturing, but I really want to make it more practical for the bow hunter.
Yep.
Rather than just talking about new products, I want to talk about some of the ways that we use releases.
Sure. Yep.
So the first thing I've got a question about, I like a light trigger, and you know that. We've kind of gone back and forth on that.
Yep.
I seem to shoot better on a light trigger when I'm trying to create a surprise release.
Right.
It's just the way I'm wired. I mean, I'm down in the half-pound range or less, on trigger tension.
Yep.
What do you see, like from the best shooters out there, from your customers? I mean, what is the trigger tension that seems to work the best for people?
Bill likes a lighter trigger, and I think the majority of guys that are just at-home backyard shooters and that love bow hunting, which is what our industry is built upon, probably predominantly prefer a lighter trigger. So, as guys are starting younger now, they're tending to like a little heavier trigger. So, as a release manufacturer, we have to try to figure out, okay, how do we cover the demands of all the consumers? So
what is it that they like about the heavier trigger? Because I guess I've been shooting for a long time, and I don't get that.
Oh, well.
And there's something I'm not doing.
No, I just think, it's like anything else. There's multiple ways of doing anything. So what we have to figure out is how to make the release that works good for you, the consumer that wants the lighter release, and at the same time be able to offer another model or a model that's adjustable that would cover a heavier, medium trigger, lighter trigger. And a lot of that people say, well, does it have trigger tension? Well, yeah, a lot of releases have trigger tension, have trigger travel, and even with travel, that affects tension. Because if you want, it can get complicated when you start talking about the internal components of a release. What we try to do is dumb it down a little bit in our design so it's simple, but yet high quality and effective. And Bill likes a lighter release, so he's probably going to prefer a release that's not got a lot of a spring load under the trigger, whether it has a spring or whatever, adjust that. So sometimes he may prefer a release that's got a mechanism that has less overhang on the sears or a roller sear, so when he actually pulls on that release, it's not going to require a pound of tension to set it off. But Bill would say also, I like it light, but I don't want to feel it move.
Right.
So they're all over. There's all ways of adjusting that. So what we at B3 try to do is make releases that are adjustable with multiple type options on how the mechanism works, but yet make it a solid quality product.
So we got two releases here.
Yep, sure. This is the HUL Pro. It's new for 2024. It does not have a spring under the trigger.
Okay.
So it's a different way of holding the trigger in place and not having travel, and yet being solid where you can actually feel the trigger, but not a hair trigger. So that's what that release is. And it probably will suit Bill's needs because it's light enough that he's not going to have to think about it a lot, but he's not going to feel travel because he has a travel adjustment.
We played with it in the booth with the shooter.
Yep.
And I made sure that when I pulled back on it as hard as I could, that I didn't trip it.
Yep.
Then I got to full draw and played with it, and it's
a
got pretty good feel.
nice clean trigger. The thing I like about this release is you got a good feel for the trigger without loading it on a bow because it doesn't have the spring under it. Most releases that have the springs, and there's nothing wrong with it, we make a lot of them that do, you kind of have to load some tension on it so you can actually truly feel what the trigger feels like, because just pulling the trigger on it is a false sense of what the release is actually doing.
Right. This replaces the old Hawk.
Well, we still have both because they both have different ways that the trigger's being loaded.
So the Hawk, the traditional regular Hawk, has got a little bit heavier trigger.
It does, and it's also got the ability to go from a medium to heavy trigger to what we would call a heavy trigger. Yeah. So that a lot of the guys want that because they want to really grab that trigger and not feel travel and shoot kind of a pull-push shot, which I think is kind of what the newer guys are being taught. Whether they're shooting hinges or whatever, they want a truly surprise release, and they're shooting at such a young age, they develop that shot style. And then, Bill, you and I go back a ways here, so we're a little older, where we're probably shooting that style of shot that we were taught more of just a true squeeze shot.
Well, mine is I would call it a static.
Yep.
When I shoot, I don't break open.
Yep.
For me, when I'm at my best, the bow goes straight forward, and my elbow goes straight back.
Yep.
It's like
a
little bit of this.
And I think what you're saying, static, and that's probably leans more towards my shot as well, is I'm not real active with my arms and back. I'm just letting the pin kind of sit there and squeezing the trigger.
Pull against the back wall, just enough tension to feel it.
Yep.
So you're not creeping.
Yep.
And then squeeze.
Yep. There's a ton of different shot styles. So what we try to do is, hey, can we make a release that this guy's going to like, and the next guy, well, I don't like that, but I like this. And
Right.
you know, we're going to talk about 2 releases here because they look real similar. You know, we have the claw, which is a release we've had for a couple years, but we changed it. So we removed the spring from the underbelly of the release. So it allowed the release to actually have a lot better float at the trigger. So when you pull that trigger, you're not loading the spring. And if you're changing the travel, you're changing the loads, you know, the compression of the spring. So we wipe that all the way out. So now the trigger resets and it can be set extremely light. Light, extremely light to light is kind of where that release. And then the HUL Pro would take the guy from the next level that wants a medium trigger, and then the regular HUL for the guys that want the heavier trigger.
Which one is the super light one?
The claw. But I just think at the end of the day, you can sit here at the ATA booth, and these lights and everything. Wow, man, that looks awesome, and oh, I like that. You truly don't know what you've got, and you need to shoot it, because most people are way too quick to make a decision. You need to shoot it for a couple of days, but get it in the yard, get away from all the lights and stuff, and just there, okay, yeah, and develop some shots, some muscle memory, and you will either say, hey, maybe I want a little bit lighter, or hey, maybe I need a little heavier. And the one thing that I will say, and I think it's important, is when shooting your bow, if you shoot a lot, Bill shoots a lot, you know, heck, you hunt all the time, so you're constantly shooting your bow, and you don't just go out 5 minutes before archery season opens and start practicing. You shoot throughout the year. So I think it's good to change because it keeps the shot honest. And what I'm saying is, you will learn the release. If you shoot the same,
cheating it.
absolutely.
So that brings us back to these.
Yep.
And I'll play with these quite a bit during the off season to eliminate that.
Yep.
Because I don't just go to the or the index triggered release until right before I hunt.
Right.
Because I don't want that. I don't want my mind to get trained, or my central nervous system to get trained to when that's going to go off.
Sure.
So I play with these.
The hinges.
Right. And the hinge will force that surprise release. And if I get used to that one, I can change where the arc is, and I can change the timing.
You can move the hour sear is micro adjustment on the adjustable on the travel, so you can move that around. You can shoot it with a click, without a click.
Yeah.
You know, shoot the hinge, shoot the thumb button. But I think it's good, and I don't think it's mandatory, but I think the more you shoot, and now we all shoot string loops. So the string loop is industry standard now. So to change from one release to the other is not very complicated.
No, I mean, I just jump back and forth between them. In fact, my aim points barely even change.
Right.
You know, going back from the hinge to the index trigger.
Yeah.
But that's the way I get around that, you know, where your body gets too used to the way it's going to
100%.
fire.
And I think what Bill's saying there is what I tell a lot of guys to ask my opinion of I'm having a problem with my shot. Here's what I'm experiencing. A lot of times the first thing I will say, is your draw length good? Yes. You've not changed anything? No. Maybe you should try a different release for a while. And let's just reprogram the mind. And everybody's got their own answers. But you know, at the end of the day, if you practice a lot, you're probably better off switching around a little bit. And then you will always have that release that I don't care, this is my favorite style release. And for me, my go-to is always the thumb button because of my target, my 3D shooting.
Well, that's a lot of information, and I appreciate it, Brian. And we're going to come back again with another episode of the setup, and we're going to talk about the thumb versus the index triggered release.
Yep. Thank you, Bill.